Hi, I'm Kelly Vaughn, and this is Inside Indy. I want you to take a look at the picture on your screen there. It's a picture that made national news, and we have two adults in the front seat and a 4-year-old in the back. I believe this was in Ohio, and the parents are strung out on dope, on heroin, overdosed. And a police officer arrived at the scene and assisted with them, and as far as I know, they are alive and well, but not necessarily the case with many people in Indiana. In fact, Indiana is in the grips of a heroin problem. According to the Investigative Journalism Education Consortium, depending on where you live, the severity of the issue can be dramatically different. For example, in Johnson County, for instance, the skyrocketing caseload is obvious and alarming. Heroin cases have been doubling each year since 2010. Okay, and overall the cases increased by 294% between 2008 and 2013, from 354 cases to 1,396 cases last year. And so we want to talk about this issue of the heroin crisis in central Indiana and beyond. And we have two guests in the studio who are survivors. And I just felt like if they could come in and tell their stories, perhaps we can learn from them and become better because of the messages and the lessons they have for us to learn today. They are Greg Holman, and you are a survivor of opiate addiction.
That is right.
And welcome to the show. Thanks. And Wes Martin, who is also a survivor.
Yes.
Right, welcome to Inside Indy. So are you both are you in Hamilton County, Marion County? Where do you live now?
I'm in Hendricks County.
Hendricks County.
Yes.
Okay.
Hamilton County.
Hamilton County. Okay. So I'm going to start with Greg. If you could tell us where you came from and where you are now, and then we'll get into causes and that kind of thing. But I want to hear your stories first.
Yeah, not a problem. I was raised in a good Christian family. A lot of people get a misconception that they might have had a traumatic childhood, and that's usually not the case. It just gets associated with it, unfortunately. But I am the second of 6, and we moved from Chicago to Fishers 25 years ago, and have lived here ever since.
Okay. And so you come into Indianapolis, you're going to school, and how did you get hooked on, was it heroin specifically?
It led to it.
Led
yes.
to that, okay. So tell us how you went from point A to B to that.
It happened pretty quick. During high school, I had a lot of anxiety, and I just wanted to fit in with the cool crowd, as people go through that in high school. And freshman year, I had my wisdom teeth taken out, and they prescribed me Vicodin. And from right there, something happened. I felt my anxiety gone, my social anxiety. I can interact with people. It felt like, okay, where's this been all my life? And by the end of senior year, I was a full-blown undercover addict, hooked on anything I can get my hands on, Oxycontin, smoking fentanyl. And then a year after high school, when I was 19, is the first time I shot up heroin.
I want to switch to Wes Martin, who's a survivor. Tell us your story, how you became addicted.
Yeah, mine started basically like his. My parents were loving parents. I always wanted to fit in with the cool kids just like that. I didn't start until after high school. When I was a senior, I got a back injury when I was weightlifting, and my doctor prescribed me Vicodin. And I wasn't really using it that much. I was selling it. And when I was selling it to people, they're like, why don't you use it? I was like, I don't know. Why should I? And then they said, well, just take a couple and tell me how you feel. So I did. And when I felt that way, I just wanted to constantly feel that way. And I was basically chasing my next high, and it got deeper and deeper. I was prescribed 120 a month, and they were gone in like 2 weeks.
Whoa. That's some strong stuff. Vicodin is nothing to play with.
Yeah. When they were gone, I would have to go out and find more or different other drugs. I'm sorry.
No. So I guess one question that pops in my mind, because I've had Vicodin before, and I don't remember feeling anything. So I'm trying to figure out, there must be some differences in body chemistry. What have you learned since you've gone through this journey and now you have recovered? Is there some difference in terms of how people
Yeah.
receive these medications?
Definitely. The metabolism, the way it breaks down in your body, your weight, your height, it all depends on it. I would take a 500, wouldn't feel it. But if I took 2 or 3 500s, then yeah, definitely. There's multitude of factors that go into it.
Did you want to add to that, Greg?
No, that's perfect.
Okay, so I guess you're healed.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want to hear about this
so.
because most people, my understanding when it comes to the recovery process, it can be long and tedious and very painful. Have you gone through this before in terms of the attempt to get better?
We both have.
Okay,
yes.
so tell us about what you've gone through before, Greg.
Yeah, this was my last attempt. This was my 9th time in a rehab.
Wow.
Every time I would go to a rehab, they would prescribe me something that eventually went from helping back to the addiction state. I was pretty desperate. Every time I would get clean, it didn't really deal with the eternal issues of my anxiety and depression and just my brain chemistry that was messed up from the last 10 years of using heroin. And that's something I've always wanted to get taken care of, and I've talked to people about, but it never got addressed, which just led me right back to it eventually.
Did you go through kind of the same things, the symptoms,
Yeah,
in terms of withdrawing?
Yeah, it lasted for me about 2 weeks till I started to feel better again. My joints would ache. I wouldn't even want to get out of bed some mornings. When I got clean, I've been to 3 rehabs. When I would get out of the rehab, I would have the anxiety, the depression. I'd still have cravings, and it eventually just overtook me. And I wanted to feel good again. I wanted to feel how I thought myself was. I wanted to feel myself again.
Okay.
And after going through this latest treatment of NAD, I feel like I felt before I started using. And I didn't think that I would ever feel that way again.
Wow. So this NAD, which I've heard about it, we've even talked about it on this show before. I just know that it has to do something with niacin. So tell us about that and how it's different. Do you want to share your story, Greg, about what you went through with the NAD?
Sure. When I first heard about it from my dad and Joe Pappas, which is the CEO, I was like, okay, so there's such a great success rate. What's the catch here? So I was desperate, and like I said, I've tried everything before. What is it going to hurt to try this? So I did my own research about it, and it's saying NAD is amino acid that everybody has in us, and sometimes when you have addiction issues, it's lower in your body, and that's when you have all the side effects from using. And they were telling me after 10 days, we replenish your brain, we restore your brain, and you don't have to deal with that anymore. Wow. So I was overtaken when the first time I heard that, and I was kind of in disbelief a little bit because my thought process of after 10 days, this is my expectations. But after that 10 days, it blew the lid right off the water.
You felt different?
Oh, absolutely amazing. I had this procedure done about 6 months ago, and I still haven't had any cravings or any urgencies to go use it all.
Wow. So it sounds like whatever they do supersedes what the drug was doing. Sounds like, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, so the NAD is the new high, which is normal.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you, Wes? Now, have you gone through this? Are you going through this?
I went through it about 4 weeks ago.
Okay.
My dad told me about it. I had a relapse on heroin, and I was in the hospital. And he told me about it and was like, hey, there's this kind of new thing out there. It's kind of experimental. It's all holistic, and it replenishes your brain, pretty much everything he said. And I was so done with everything. I just said yes right away. And he said, well, it's kind of expensive, so look into it. So I looked into it, and all I saw was good things. And like him, I was like, what's the catch? And I couldn't find a catch. I even Googled cons to NAD therapy. Didn't really find any. I saw it helped with the anxiety, the depression, the cravings, and that's what I needed. I didn't want to get hooked on another drug like methadone or Suboxone. So we talked to Joe, I talked to Greg, and hearing his story really helped me look forward to doing the NAD and helped me get the foot in the door. And first few days, I was still a little skeptical, but I felt better within that first day.
Did you throw up? Did you shake? Did whatever you normally do? Did you have any of
No.
that during the withdrawal period? Sounds like that. Do you even consider it that?
Yeah. The first day I went into it, I was already 2 weeks clean, but I was still withdrawing from morphine. And I couldn't sleep. I got like 2 hours of sleep each night for those 2 weeks. I never got sick, but after that first day, my withdrawals were gone. About 90% of them were gone.
Wow.
I still couldn't really sleep and didn't really have an appetite. But by day 3, everything was gone. And that amazed me. And all the way to day 10, I just got happier and happier and felt better, felt more healthier. It was just a great thing.
Sounds like people in general need to go through this therapy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'm sitting there going, I gotta try this myself.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. So what's life like for you now as opposed to then, Greg?
Life is awesome. I have a great job that I love to actually wake up to and go to every day. I can actually keep my job. I am gaining the respect and the love back from my family, which is very important to me because we used to be a very close-knit family. I mean, I have a great girlfriend. I mean, I couldn't be any happier. Life is great. It's great to just feel normal again.
Wes?
Same thing. It's amazing not having to get high to go have fun. I used to not even be able to go into grocery stores without freaking out when I was sober. So just being able to go out, do things with your family. Like, me and my parents have gotten close again, and that's helped a lot.
So what do you say to parents out there who are watching, and they may not have a child who has an addiction problem, but you know what you all went through when you were younger and what you were exposed to and what kids are really doing out there. What would you tell them if they're watching now in terms of just avoiding the addiction issue from the get-go?
I mean, you have to talk about it. You watch your child, the personality changes, things they do. Maybe they're staying out later. Maybe they're not answering your calls when they're hanging out with their friends.
Okay,
Yeah.
keep an eye on them.
Yeah, keep an eye on them.
So how can people get the help that you guys got with NAD? Where do you go, and can you give us an idea of how much it costs? Because as you mentioned, it's not cheap.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, it's Emerald Neuro Recovery Centers. It's in Carmel. I would like to give my phone number out if anyone
Okay.
personally wants to call me and needs help. It's 317-625-6278. It's open 24 hours a day. Don't hesitate to call.
Okay, so there's help, and I guess you guys probably mentor people as well, right? In terms of people coming in and
We do.
kind of coach them along. So well, we appreciate you coming in and sharing your stories. That's not an easy thing to do, so I commend you.
Thank you.
And I'm just so blown away about this whole thing, and that's why we've several times put the word out about it, because there is hope for people. And when you see it in the news and it's just taking over our news stories in our country, you think, okay, yeah, we've got to find some solutions. This is really promising. So I thank God for you all being and joining us here on Inside Indy. Thanks so much, Greg and
Thank you.
Wes,
Thanks for having
joining
us.
us here on Inside Indy. And we're back here on Inside Indy. You know, depression among young people is rising. And here to offer perhaps some solutions and some to give us some answers to why that's happening is Dr. William Bailey Jones III. You are a local psychiatrist here in Indianapolis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay, and the name of your practice?
The Indiana Neuropsychiatric Institute.
Okay, all right, very good. Depression up with young people. What's up with that?
Well, nobody knows exactly why depression is increasing. We do know for certain that it is increasing among young people. We can easily postulate that the stress that young people currently experience is a direct contributor to the increasing rates of depression.
Okay. And I think about their world is probably very different than the world we grew up in as well.
Very much so. I mean, it's very difficult being a young person these days. The type of pressure that they experience is exponentially greater than it was when we were kids.
Okay.
You know, with social media, with...
Oh, don't even mention it.
you know,
That's scary.
It's really quite extraordinary.
Okay, we'll talk about that too some more in the interview. So define depression, though. What is depression? Because everybody feels down every now and then, right?
You're absolutely right. We have to distinguish between true clinical depression and what we would call feeling down or the blues, that type of thing, feeling sad. Everybody experiences feelings of sadness from time to time. But there are specific criteria that are highly specific to depression.
Okay, and they are?
One, if there's changes in sleep patterns, either not sleeping or sleeping too much or a mixed pattern of that.
Okay.
Secondly, if someone loses interest in things that were formerly of great joy to them.
Okay.
So losing interest in life, losing pleasure in life. Thirdly, if there are guilt feelings or unpleasant ruminative thoughts that continue to plague an individual.
For instance, give it an example of what that might be.
Very often people will be almost obsessed with something that went wrong in their past, and they simply cannot let it go. And it keeps recurring again and again. And that's what I mean by ruminative. It keeps recurring again and again and again. And that is a contributing factor to depression.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Another one is energy, loss of energy, decreased concentration,
Okay.
a change in appetite, a significant change in appetite, or increases in anxiety.
Okay.
Sometimes people get into a vegetative state where they can barely move.
Really?
At other times, they get into a state where they are so agitated they can't sit still. And then last but not least, certainly not least, are feelings of suicide. Any thoughts or feelings of suicide must be taken seriously, especially when we're talking about a young person.
Okay. Now, when you diagnose depression, though, is it a matter of having all of these, or 3 out of 5, or how do you? Because
five of those symptoms for a period of several weeks or more is fairly definitive for depression.
Wow. Okay.
For major depression, clinical depression.
Okay.
Or as I often say, a medical depression as distinguished from just feeling down or the blues.
Okay. And thanks for clarifying and explaining all of that, because we just hear depression. We really don't know what that means. And so taking that back to our young people, then that makes even more sense, because all you have to think about is all the things that they are exposed to, as you mentioned, social media, television, the peer pressure,
Exactly.
and so forth. So I could see why the depression. Now let me run something by you, because I have certain theories about things, especially when it comes to nutrition. And you mentioned even earlier one of the challenges that people face with ADHD.
Yes.
Okay, and then I think about depression, sugar. And I've heard, I don't know whether I've heard it over the news or something I've read years ago, I read a lot of books on nutrition, that oftentimes when sugar is taken out of young people's diets, that you see an improvement in behavior, and the things like depression or the ADHD, they disappear or they decrease. What are your thoughts on something like that?
There certainly is evidence suggesting that diet can make a difference, especially in an issue like ADHD, attention deficit with hyperactivity disorder.
Okay.
However, the literature that I'm aware of suggests that this is a relatively small subset of individuals who will respond to nutritional approaches. Again, ADHD is also a form of biochemical imbalance within the brain. specifically dopamine and norepinephrine.
Okay.
And unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, there's a structure known as the blood-brain barrier. So that even if we took large doses of amino acids to raise the levels of these biochemicals in the brain, there's only so much that the brain can absorb in a 24-hour period. And that's the limiting factor in terms of using nutrition as a treatment modality. But again, as I stated earlier, I firmly embrace nutrition as and you know, supplements, et cetera, as a part of an overall strategy for wellness.
Okay. Okay. You talk about the chemical imbalance in the brain. So how does it get that way? Why are we working fine one day and then suddenly it doesn't work anymore?
To be succinct, we don't know. Again, we know that there are risk factors, trauma, stress, these are all risk factors. In the case of ADHD, there's a very large and significant genetic component to it. But what actually causes the chemical imbalance in the truest sense of the word, we do not know.
Okay. Okay. Just about 3 minutes left. So I want to touch on the bipolar disorder because lately in the news we're hearing of certain celebrities who have that particular disorder. Can you explain to us what it is and how it happens?
The best way to think of bipolar disorder is as an emotional roller coaster. One can experience episodes of highs, euphoria, on top of the world, and then just as rapidly crash and experience deep depression, sometimes characterized by suicidal ideation. It can alternate rapidly with feelings of extreme irritability. And again, this is a cycle. It's like a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. And until definitive treatment is initiated, they will stay on that roller coaster cycle until something specific is done.
Okay. And I've heard sometimes of the medications, the people don't like to take them because they don't feel like themselves.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, happily, we have a newer class of medications that are fully approved by the FDA and very efficient in stabilizing the mood.
Okay.
So, you know, if I would say to anyone listening who is experiencing bipolar disorder but not feeling as well as they think they should, to talk to their doctor about some of the newer treatment modalities. There may be something newer out there that could be more effective for them.
Okay. So if someone needed help, how would they get in touch with you, Dr. Jones?
I can be reached at area code 317-771-3721.
Okay, it sounds good to me. And your website address again?
Is inpsych.org.
Okay, inpsych.org.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. William Jones, thanks so much for joining us.
It is my pleasure,
on
Kelly,
Inside
always.
Indy and enlightening us. And I feel better already since you've been in the room. Thanks for being here. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
I'm your host, Kelly Vaughn. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Has Christmas become too commercialized? In the 1800s, the holiday consisted of feasts and church services. So what can Christians do to put Christ back into Christmas? Pastor Rob Hovermill of Indianapolis urges Christians to simply speak up and say, Merry Christmas.
And I think if we continue to say Merry Christmas, because when people take time off, that's what they're taking. They're taking time off for Christmas. Companies give Christmas Day, or that Friday, or whenever it is, they give that day off. And in all of your packets in your companies, it's Christmas, you got Christmas Day off. People are taking Christmas vacations.
Nationally renowned journalist Lee Hawkins Jr. agrees. Hawkins grew up singing in the church as a young boy and is putting Christ back into Christmas in a new music video and Christmas album he's released with nothing but songs about the birth of Jesus.
I do think that Christmas is too commercialized, and there's so many different things out there and emphasis that we put on the holidays, including, shopping and all of the things that we feel that we should associate Christmas with, but not enough on the message of what Christmas is really about. And the reason I named my album the Songs About the Birth of Jesus was because I wanted to actually tell that great story. The video, Pretty Little Baby, is an inspirational story, I believe, because it really takes the story about Jesus being born that fateful day and putting it in a modern context. As you see Mary and Joseph walking out of the story, and then Mary starts to feel Jesus kicking, and she falls and she throws down her food and her groceries, and then all of a sudden we're enveloped in this story where the three wise men are on the bus and they say, okay, it's about to happen. And as you can see them walk, it's just such a powerful story, because most people do not know that this is happening and that this is the story of Jesus. But as the story goes on, we're starting to see it unfold in modern times.
What you gonna call your pretty little baby? What you gonna call your pretty little baby? What you gonna call that pretty little baby? Born in Bethlehem. What you gonna call your pretty little baby? What you gonna call your pretty little baby? What you gonna call that pretty little baby? He was born in Bethlehem. Sweet little baby, born in a manger. Born in Bethlehem. Sweet